We don't just feel emotions, we store them physically in our bodies, and over time they create patterns which reshape the way that we hold ourselves, our health, our appearance, and the way that we develop at any age and at any time. So here is a full video breaking down exactly how you can release physical tension in the fascia, the layer of connective tissue that runs throughout your body, and as a result literally shift and release trauma stored within your body. And that's not the exact mechanism. I'll explain it a bit further as we get on. But if you don't know who I am, my name is Oscar Patel. I transform myself from this to this, fixing my crooked teeth and overbite completely naturally, while also transforming my face, rewiring my sleep apnea, asthma, pelvic tilt, flat feet, forward head posture, knocked knees, facial asymmetry, and lots more. And now I've also helped thousands of other people do the exact same, including my 59-year-old mother, who's on the screen here, my 26-year-old older sister, who's here. Here are some more transformations from people of all backgrounds and ages and demographics, to the point where we currently have the largest health-based paid community in the entire world, and we're also running our own scientific research project. So that's a brief intro, but without further ado, let's break this down. Step one, let's understand some of these base patterns. What happens when you're angry? Usually, we clench our jaw. When we do this, we overactivate the master muscles, we grind our teeth together, and while we're experiencing an emotion in our minds and living it through the world, this also shifts the entire way our body is functioning. When we overactivate these master muscles, there is a complex between the master muscles in our jaw and a connection to the temporalis muscles on the sides of our head. If these activate, that shifts the way that the pressure and dynamic holds between the two muscles. Equally, when the teeth clench down together, that's going to affect proprioception. When the teeth touch, we provide a sensor to our body through the proprioceptive feedback loop, allowing our head to stay in alignment and our body posture to shift. And so when we clench our jaw and shift the amount of pressure so rapidly, you can imagine our entire face and neck tighten up, and as a result, our entire body does as well. Again, if you shift your jaw, you'll shift your feet. The structure is interconnected, and we know this scientifically through the deep front line, which connects from the base, the hyoid bone, all the way down through the rib cage pelvis and down to the bottom of our bodies. And so we understand that when we're angry, this will reshape our face over time if we constantly become an angry person, if we associate ourselves in that way. If you say, how would you describe yourself in 3 words? And by the way, this isn't a therapeutic kind of video. This is purely physical. But let's say how would you describe yourself in 3 words? You could say angry, harsh, and stubborn. You can say kind, loving, and empathetic. These are completely different words and meanings. And maybe some people say, okay, I'm smart and kind, but I get angry pretty easily. The moment you admit these things, the moment you associate yourself with that person, the more you kind of buy into this thinking and feeling anyway, and the more your body adapts around it. So let's say you get angry more consistently than someone else, and you associate yourself naturally as doing that, then you clench your jaw more, you shape your body in different ways. And the more that these actions compound, the more ingrained these patterns become in the way the muscles develop. When we use muscles, then that grows the muscle. When this muscle grows, and as a result the teeth clench down, we're going to take pressure off of the tongue, because usually it should be the tongue resting against the roof of the mouth, supporting the face, the teeth gently hovering over each other or gently touching, and the face relaxed. So when we constantly shift this tension, you can imagine that because our body's like a kind of closed energy system, if one thing pulls, one thing has to push. Imagine all of these muscles overactivate, then as a result, your tongue's going to start dropping. The tongue's going to stop providing the support to the face because these other muscles are overactivating. And it goes vice versa. If someone has a narrow palate, as a result, they overactivate these muscles in their jaw, and that kind of goes back and forth. Okay, so that's one quick analogy, and we're starting to understand this. I want to double that and add it further, okay? And I know this from firsthand in my life, in the way I operate, and particularly with my mum, who had 7 teeth extracted, 4 root canals, autoimmune diseases, herniated discs, lots of previous health issues, and as a result, that completely shifts someone's nervous system, the way they experience the world. Equally, we've seen it with lots of people in our school community. Everyone has their own stresses and burdens. It's a beautiful experience of life, but equally, when we're stressed, that's going to reshape everything. What happens when you're stressed? Minus the way that you're thinking, your breathing becomes shallow. When your breathing becomes shallow, that shifts your nervous system. So if your nervous system shifts into a sympathetic state rather than a parasympathetic state, if you shift into fight or flight mode, as a result, your hormones regulate differently. You spike cortisol. Your fascia a process begins to create called fascial armoring, where the fascia literally starts tightening and restricting itself in response to the way that your body is adapting. Your breath is what hydrates your fascia. So you want the fascia, this tissue that runs throughout the entire body, to glide, to be hydrated, to move in a flowing pattern. So imagine the most beautiful movement. Imagine this kind of spinning spiral-like motion. Take it from a tennis player swinging a ball, to Tom Brady throwing a football, to a ballerina spinning around, all the way back to a sprinter in the Olympic final swaying from side to side, and all the way, take that to shells in the sea and galaxies in the sky, and the little curls in our hair, on our scalp. All of these spiral patterns we see throughout nature mimic the kind of shape of the fascia. Imagine that entire system starts to get tighter and dehydrated. Rather than being elastic like a spring and recoiling back, it gets tighter and it stops forming back to the shape it was meant to. It becomes less elastic, it becomes dehydrated, and it starts protecting itself because it's not as confident. It's the same kind of way you can imagine that over time we start jumping less high, we start becoming less mobile, and this is all starting from within through this structure itself, because that's what shapes our movement. It weighs over 22 kg and it affects every pattern. So when we're stressed and our breath becomes shallow, that's going to tighten the body, it's going to shift the nervous system, our hormones are going to dysregulate, our fascia is going to be tighter throughout the entirety of our body, and as a result, how does this shift the way our body holds itself? If we know that we need to still hold ourselves upright, if we still need to walk, if we still need to speak, if we still need to do things in the world, which everyone does, and you're in a completely different state, then how do you get through these things? You compensate. Rather than using your fascia, you overactivate the surrounding muscles. Rather than expanding your rib cage when you breathe, you hunch over and you start breathing up through your chest into the top of your head. Your head falls down, your tongue falls off of the roof of the mouth, the head shifts forward, the body hunches over. And because you've shifted into this way, you've shifted your posture. And when you shift this posture, this creates an entire vicious feedback loop where then when your tongue falls off of the roof of the mouth, the thoracic fascia behind here and the cervical fascia behind here become tighter and they become compressed. As a result, it becomes even harder for the rib cage to expand when you're hunched over, further creating an entire process where everything gets even worse. This kind of vicious feedback loop, which I just previously mentioned. Experiences shape structure, emotions, the way you interpret things, the way you hold yourself, the way you carry yourself with posture, shape structure, and structure then creates further limitations which continue this negative cycle. And so you can see how things start to cascade and fly away. And a really important anecdotal way to interpret this, if you can view it in terms of a transformation, we can take someone like Carla, who's 36 years old, from our private community, who transformed from this to this in a few months. When you release the fascia, when you then work with your body and you work with these muscles, imagine you're used to clenching your jaw. These things become subconscious. They become natural because your body picks what's safest and easiest. It doesn't know what's best. We weren't meant to have mirrors. We weren't meant to constantly analyze ourselves in our face and our body. And obviously, while this channel is around improving your appearance by fixing your health, that's not the end goal. It's about kind of beauty. We were given faces, but not mirrors. And so the things that improve our face are the things that we won't be able to see. If we want to restore our natural beauty, we don't focus on an individual feature. We focus on the feelings within our body. We're focusing on improving our breathing, improving our movement, improving our posture. And as a byproduct, structure shifts into place because it's just health. The only reason we find any of these individual features attractive are because it's healthy. Wider palate, wider cheekbones, health. Better movement, better flowing, better walking, better back chain dominance, shapes neck posture, shapes head posture, shapes tongue posture shapes the face. And you start to see these connections. You can't change the way you look without changing the way you move. You can't change the way you hold yourself without changing your breath. It's all one thing. And so in the entirety of the health and wellness space, people are focused on one individual niche. They're focused on selling one product, one supplement, one core solution, this muscle within your face, when in reality, it's not only your face, it's connected to your body, it's connected to the way that you feel things, your nervous system, the way that you experience your world, your unique story, your unique personality. And these things, of course, over time shape everything. They shape who we are, and who we are becomes associated with what we look like. It's, kind of taboo to view beauty in this way, but it's not this kind of superficial construct. It's a representation of who you are. Before people know you, they perceive you. And so these things are a reflection in a lot of ways of the internal to a larger extent than people realize. And so that's why you can have people that age like this, people that age like this. And that's why all of the people in the community, and again, here are some more transformations on the screen, can transform from this to this naturally, because it's meant to happen. These patterns are ingrained within us. When we're a child, we don't experience these stresses and emotions. We haven't stored this trauma and patterns. And as a result, it's natural, it's flowing, and every child crawls. And as a result, they begin in these back chain dominant positions. If you don't know what back chain dominance is, it's hips back, head forward, feet straight, knees bent. And I know that's a quick explanation, but let's put a video on the screen of sprinters running. You see their heads are slightly forwards. If you draw a line from the top of their bum to the head, there's a line slightly forward. You can see that they're engaging the back chain, back part of their body, the posterior part of their body. And this is the part of the body responsible for up to 80% of the force and power we produce. If we're not dominant with the back part of our body, then as a result, our posture collapses. And as a result, again, we kickstart this entire process, which we've just talked about. So you can see that every baby crawls naturally with their hips back and head forward. We begin in these back chain dominant positions. Again, and I'm not saying this is bad, but because I myself was born through one and I'm super grateful to be here. But if a baby's born through a C-section and doesn't have the proper compression, decompression cycles, or if they're not breastfed, etc., minus any, a thing like this, it's natural. It should be natural for a baby to put their tongue on the roof of the mouth. It should be natural to breathe through their nose. These things are ingrained within us. These are natural patterns. And so getting them back, no matter how old we are, should be the exact same thing, And obviously that's not going to radically mean that people are going to wake up looking like supermodels overnight if they start this at 96. However, it does mean that they can feel better, look better, fix their structure, improve their movement, and then over time the looks follow. This leads perfectly onto step 2. Now that we understand the kind of base pattern, how do we actually begin to work with this? How do we understand the way that these emotions and the way we experience the world obviously are constantly shaping ourselves, and how do we release this kind of trauma stuck within our body? So again, we're not releasing like a specific memory by pushing on a certain point. It's more shifting the posture and shifting the patterns that these emotions and the way we experience them have created us to be in. And as a result, you can then release things in that way, or at least in my experience, you can drastically. And again, to further show it, from my transformation where I had asthma, sleep apnea, terrible health issues at a very young age, and as a result, I was constantly tired, I wasn't sleeping properly, I had low energy, I was constantly stressed, my breathing was exceptionally shallow, and this was completely shaping my appearance, posture, and the way I hold and viewed myself. And as a byproduct of focusing on shifting my physical body, I noticed very radically that my mind, the way I perceive everything, the world, etc., really opened up to a much greater degree than people can imagine. Even things like my voice shifted, the way I hold myself, everything. It's a whole demeanor. You can tell who's more attractive just by looking at people's feet and the way they move. You don't even need to see their face. Equally, that's why if someone gets plastic surgery and they shift one individual feature in the face without shifting the entire structure, then you know it looks off. Even if you measure the exact perfect angle for someone's cheekbones and you give them to them, if their jaw doesn't match, if their tongue doesn't match, if their body doesn't match, if their neck posture doesn't match, if their eyes don't match, then we instinctively know that something's off because we don't see people's faces or individual features. We as modern people have been taught to obsess over an individual feature rather than realizing that everything is just a representation of habits, inputs, and structure. We are just a reflection of this. And so step 2 is going to be a bit more practical. How are we going to begin releasing everything? What are the key kind of points? Well, I'll break it down. There are 3 key points which I want to go over, and I'll go over one at a time. And by the way, full routines and access to all of this information is in the private community. If you would like to join, if you want more routines, if you want an accountability coach, and if you want to do this properly, and you want like-minded people who have had their transformation that are willing to help you, and you want just, again, the most beautiful community, the QR code is on the screen, the link is in the description. I highly recommend you to at least check it out. You don't have to join if you don't want to, but I really believe it's valuable for every single person that does. And I really hope that this mission, not me, health is looks though, this mission can change people's lives and is so much more powerful than just me or you. It's really everything. Okay, so we're going back to it. 3 key points. Firstly, we have this point directly under our cheekbones in our face near what is called the zygomatic maxillary suture. We're going to take our index finger, place it on the edge of our cheekbone, take our thumb, put it inside our mouth and match the point like this. Okay, so I'm directly under with my thumb under my cheekbone. And from this point, you can go like this. You rest your fingers on your temples. Gently massage upwards and outwards and just breathe backwards through that point. For a lot of people, if they're swallowing improperly, and if we go quickly over the key kind of core mechanical habits, We have swallowing, chewing, breathing, posture, walking, standing, throwing, okay? And so all of these things are completely and constantly forming and shaping us. If people are swallowing improperly, which is a very common thing, I guarantee you, no matter how good looking or healthy everyone thinks they are, the most beautiful person in the world, if you're sitting in a chair while you eat, you have to swallow improperly because your hips are not engaged, they're dead. You have to be in a front chain dominant position because your glutes are deactivated, and therefore no matter how perfectly you sit up or no matter how good your habits once were when you were a baby, etc., it's still not ideal. And so we still don't swallow properly, and that's not a cause to over optimize and stress and worry and do everything in a perfect manner, but it is a means to therefore encourage us to release and realize that this is affecting the way the muscles work, the way that we store things, and preventing us from actually opening up our bodies and therefore things stuck inside. So this point, when people swallow improperly, usually they'll hunch over, they'll swallow like this. You see, they'll use their cheek muscles, they'll make these faces, they'll squint their eyes, and they'll really create this odd suction rather than just using their tongue independently to perform what is called the Mona Lisa swallow. So let's put Mona Lisa here, let's put me here, and let's just do it. Deadpan, nothing in my face moving, just my neck, just my tongue suctioning, moving everything backwards, me and Mona Lisa, deadpan at the camera, okay? That's what we want, and that's what we need to train towards. But every previous improper swallow, which we've done, hundreds of thousands of times, every single person watching this, if we provide a bit of pressure on that point and massage gently outwards while regulating our breathing, we can release some fascial tension, and we'll also begin to slowly decompress the sutures and work with the body. Ideally, you do this while standing up with proper posture in a back chain dominant position. Just play around with it. Depending on the amount of soreness and pressure you feel, you can vary the intensity. You don't need to push really hard. This isn't about pushing. This is about going, kind of working with your body. I'm not healing you. This information isn't healing you. You are using this to heal yourself. You engage your own nervous system when you use your own thumbs and place them inside your mouth. And as a result, you take care of yourself and you rewire your patterns, because no matter anything external, no matter whether someone hit their head or this or that, everything that's happened to your body, whether it was external, the only person that can put it back together and really release things and take ownership and control is you. And that's the kind of harsh reality. People in the modern world are too quick to buy into consumerism. They'll go to another specialist, they'll buy this product, they'll do this. And I'm not against any of that directly. I'm not saying anything like this, but I am saying that if we do not work with ourselves, if we go to a chiropractor, we feel relief for a week and then 2 weeks later the same pain comes back, it's because you didn't engage your nervous system, you didn't work with your body, didn't work with your breath, and therefore your body was shifted into an improper position rather than working with your own body to release and expand. See, there's a really clear-cut difference, and that doesn't mean fascial therapists or chiropractors are bad in any way, shape, or form. It does mean that this is important to go along with it all. Okay, so from there, you can massage that point, you can play around, you can then further it to actually performing proper Zygomatic, which is the process by which you apply pressure to that point, and you can even build up to doing a full follow-up where you drive the pressure up with your thumbs, you stop resisting with your back and your neck, and you allow your body to bend slightly backwards, which connects the thumbs and the face throughout the rest of the body. However, this is a really sore spot for most people, so build up to it. And from there, if you want more, you'll see that in the school community, there are further routines on this point where you can kind of twist, move, play around, and perform specific fascial releases, which are really powerful, but start with this base point. Then we're going to move slightly further down. That's a key point in the face, but we need to understand that everything connects. And usually a big issue is that people will breathe up through their nose, into the top of their head, through their chest. If I told you to breathe right now, most people would go like that, but in reality, the air should travel smoothly like a silent ninja directly backwards into the nose, into the back, and into this kind of, and I'm gonna make a separate video on this, but this is a really fascinating concept for those of you that are still watching. Your breath forms this kind of perfect Fibonacci. It's insane when you really think about it. In reality, we have these little filters in our nose called nasal turbinates, which are arranged horizontally, so the air should travel directly backwards. And then what happens, it goes backwards, 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 up and out through the rib cage. And as a result, if you were to look at it on a body, it goes like this. Do you see? Fibonacci sequence. The same spiral, the same pattern we see everywhere, the same pattern and spiral, 55-degree spiral that we see in the fascia. It's all interconnected. It's all so obvious. It's all perfectly designed. Again, So clear. Breathe backwards into your nose, understand that mechanic, visualize that image. And once you're able to have conviction and comprehension in your mind, once you kind of start to see these patterns, everything becomes so much easier. If you don't understand what you're doing and you're doing this just to seek a solution rather than actually have conviction to work with yourself, you're bypassing and not understanding the entire concept of this. You're understanding this, and this should be intuitive towards you. Obviously, we have thousands of transformations. We have the biggest health community in the world, but that shouldn't provide any credibility or credentials. The fact that we're launching a massive scientific study shouldn't prove anything to you. It should be intuitive within you. You should be able to understand this information intuitively within your own self and body and realize that it's correct. It shouldn't be me having to convince you or show you this method, or you having to fully put all of your trust in me. Put your trust in yourself and nature and your body. Okay, so understand this is the sequence of the breath, and when you're providing pressure, breathe backwards into your nose and allow the air to go down, to expand the rib cage and for your body to start opening up. Just practice this with me. These silent breaths. And just feel the air actually traveling and feel your body starting to connect, okay? It's as simple as that. You may think you need to build up to this point, but honestly, just try this right now and you'll begin to feel what your body's actually capable of. Remember, in every moment and every single time, if you do not believe that your body can heal, then how can it possibly be? We know that the fascia has the most sensory receptors connecting our body to our minds. No matter what you do with your body, if you do not have conviction in your mind and you do this with the intention of not seeing results, then how can you possibly believe that the emotions you experience affect your body, but not the things and thoughts and emotions you feel while doing this will be the most effective to reshape it? So say anger and stress got you into this position, or stress and sadness or fear got you into this position, then what you need is radical belief and faith in order to get out of it. That's the real big correlation. That's why people can try such extreme diets. That's why people can go through such different spiritual routes and get to this kind of same conclusion, because everything is the same. Everything is one. No matter veganism or carnivore, no matter this or that, the reason that every extreme thing can work for so many different kinds of people without having completely same guiding principles is because it's working through this kind of connection of body and mind. When the body and mind are connected, the fascia has to be engaged, it has to be hydrated, it has to be elastic, and as a result, because it's interconnected with your nervous system, you buy so much into it, into your mind, that you have to make it work. Your fascia adapts around it. Remember, your mind still controls your body. The issue is that over time, a lot of these extremer things aren't natural for the body, and as a result, the diet, if your diet's off, then your fascia gets tighter, and if your fascia gets tighter, then it does the connection between body and mind, and therefore no matter how much you believe it's going to work, it stops working. That's why a lot of things, if someone does something extreme for 2 weeks, they have radical shifts. They have so much faith, and those 2 weeks then form their opinion for the next years because they believe so much in it, and they put so much emphasis on it, and they've seen such quick results that they believe that it was the thing that worked, rather than realizing that it was just this kind of radical belief. In reality, there is a system, there is a reality to how to approach the body and how to work with it, and it all lies in kind of just understanding it and seeing these kind of patterns within nature. That's the same resolution. Everything I've studied, everything I've learned, I've worked on scientific studies, when I've spoken with professors, when I've spoken with doctors, when I've spoken with amazing people, when I've engaged with clinicians, and now even working on this research project and seeing thousands of people transform, these are the same patterns. It's one thing, and you really start to see it clearly. And I know that may not make sense to a lot of people, but for some it will, and it's really important to understand. Okay, but getting back to it, we're breathing backwards, we're regulating our breath. The second point that we're going to move down to is the rib cage. Exceptionally important, because again, breath travels down and out through the rib cage, and the rib cage gets stuck for a lot of people. It's a very big issue, I think, because generally people develop bad habits from overcompensating. So for example, if you sleep in a super soft mattress, then your muscles are constantly compensating rather than your skeleton relaxing. Equally, if you sleep on your back rather than your side, you can't properly expand the rib cage. If you sit in a chair hunched over, how can you properly expand the rib cage? If you wear shoes that contract your toes your entire life and restrict your toe splay, then your knees cave in, your pelvis tips forward, how can you contract your rib cage? All of these things compound, and so it's inevitable that we need to work with it. It's a really particular point though, and it's really tense and sore for a lot of people. The base thing that I'd like everyone to try is to apply a bit of coconut oil to the base of their rib cage and slowly go with your fingers just in between each point. Okay, in between each rib, just going slowly, breathing, and then gently pushing this pressure up and out through each point, and you can go back and down as well through each individual point with your own fingers, okay? Always start with your own body. There are some products, devices, there are some things which are exceptionally powerful, and generally one of the rules of thumbs is that some of the only products worth buying are things aimed at this kind of fascial release, because again, you can't get into every single spot. You can always engage your breath as well. And so even if it is something external touching your body, as long as you're engaging your breath, then you're engaging your nervous system, you know? So these are some of the only products that are actually worth considering. But for now, always start with your fingers and work on the rib cage in that point. From there, you should be able to get a bit of a feel for allowing it to expand, and you can go inside the rib cage, just like this, with your hands, and place it inside the rib cage. You can breathe out. Place your fingers just inside your rib cage and just go really slowly up and around inside with 2 individual fingers or 1 individual finger, just going up and around, holding it at a certain point, breathing and going exceptionally slowly. Again, this is a sensitive area. The harder is not the better, because you're working with your body. Why would you want to just hurt your body? It's a completely crazy thought when you really think about it, this idea of pushing, which I fell for so long, and I made a lot of progress with, but not in the right direction in some ways. And so don't force your body, you know, work at your limits, allow your body to expand and progress, but don't push for pain, push for having even more feeling. People experience pain or trauma or emotions even coming up to the surface when they're doing proper work, and they view that as bad, meaning that they're creating more. But in reality, imagine all of this is stuck within your body. The fascia has been shown to hold memory. And so if they're stuck in these patterns because it's dehydrated and it's been stuck there ever since you experienced a certain emotion or an event happened, and as a result, you're finally releasing that tension, where is that going? It has to be let out, you know, and this is the kind of big thing within it. That's why things like humming, which goes into the next practice, if you are able to then hum and speak and exude your frequency, sounds shape our bodies constantly. Again, I'll make a more in-depth video on this in the very near future. The sounds we're exposed to, it's been shown that water, the shape of water can change according to the sound it's exposed to, according to the frequency it's exposed to. Water in our bodies is partially bound to fascia. Frequency is therefore, of course, going to shape the water, and therefore the fascia bound within our bodies. Fascia shapes everything and our movement, and as a result, the sounds we're exposed to will obviously overall shape us. And that's why you have different pitches. That's why if someone's happy, you can hear the passion in their voice. That's why if someone's sad, you can feel the tone and pace and pitch going down and their face falling. If someone's angry, you can hear it seething through their teeth, you see? And you start to then form these connections, which again, I hate the idea of, I don't hate anything, I dislike the idea of over-optimizing and just overthinking about this concept, because it should be intuitive, and that's the real progression of health. It's been something that I've fought for so long. I've read nearly every single scientific study related to this area. I've worked with a lot of these people. I've, hyper obsessed about all of this. And the general conclusion is that intuitively, that is always the correct answer, which is an astounding thing to come towards, and people have known it for years. That's why our great-grandparents were healthier than us, or that's why your grandmother's soup was so healing, or this practice, that technique that was taught was amazing, or maybe that's why your mum's cooking, no matter whether the ingredients can be better for you than making the same food and eating it while watching a terrible show in a dark little apartment by yourself. It's a completely different feeling. It's prepared with completely different emotions. You have a completely different experience when you do it, and therefore you engage different muscles. Your fascia adapts differently and is more hydrated while you consume it, and you digest the food better through the structure. And you start to understand these principles which have been ingrained in society, but basically I don't know the word for it, so you just gotta kind of go with my understanding, like over fanaticized and hyper studied to a point where it's basically dogma rather than intuition. Never trade your intuition for someone else's ideology. But we're going back to it, and we're talking about humming. Obviously, people like to then, according to that sound and frequency argument, and according to all of these emotions and this experience, the most natural thing based off of what people were told in the modern world is then to cut people off, to avoid this person, to turn this sound off, to limit this or limit that. Don't change any of the frequencies of sounds around you. Don't feel the need that you're limited by these people. Change your own frequency, change your own sound. So work with your own voice, work with your own humming, work with the voice and sounds that you create, and move in that way. That's why I think singing and dancing and things like this are so beautiful and amazing. I think that's why they create such joy. I think that's why music can be so cool, why cultures are so proud of different things. But generally, We call this vortex humming. You're going to breathe in, you're going to practice breath work, and then on the exhales, you're going to hum while you exhale. So let's say, for example, we practice breathing in for 6 seconds, breathing out for 6 seconds, practicing this for 2 minutes, or you can even practice things like Buteyko breathing with the humming exhale, but that's again slightly more advanced. I wouldn't push for it now. If you would like the full access to a breathwork routine, I've got a really good one that I released in the school community a few weeks ago. Highly recommend checking that one out. That's a great one. Yeah, check that one out if you want. Again, links in the description. But for example, let's try it right now. We can breathe backwards into our nose. And you can exhale and breathe and hum at the same time. And I know that seems easy, but if you just try that for 1 minute right now while you're listening to me, you will literally feel clearer. I already feel clearer after one. You start to feel a bit better because that's stimulating the fascia around the actual airways. And as a byproduct, you're also creating your own frequency, which is literally reshaping it. Also, you're creating these vibrations against the palate itself, which is really positive for releasing kind of palatal tension. When your tongue rests low on the roof of the mouth, you create palatal fascial tension in sheets that lay across the entirety of the palate. So this is an exceptionally effective practice. I highly recommend people playing around with it. And I think some of these easier, lower hanging fruits are a great way for people to get started, to understand that some of the things that you may already do are actual practices in the correct direction. And so just honing in and creating a more developed routine and pushing the needle a tiny bit further and understanding your own body and realizing that, let's say if you have practiced humming or you're a professional singer and that works for you, then maybe if you were to release tension around the Zygomatic spot or release your rib cage, or maybe you have an issue with your pelvis, the moment you can start assessing your own body more and feeling it out, the better. And that's why I think that support and accountability is really important. So for example, like that's why you'll see that the way that it's set up, if someone joins the school, you get an accountability coach. If you don't have other like-minded people helping you, these ideas for some reason are exceptionally radical in the modern world, even though they shouldn't be. They're exceptionally obvious if you explain it properly to someone. If you show this video, I don't think it's exceptionally controversial, but you say to someone just the one-liner, if you store trauma in your fascia, and a normal person, won't even comprehend that, but they'll be suspicious, they'll be freaked out, this isn't a word, but I like saying it, oddified, and so that's a new one, oddified. And so generally it's asymmetric information, and the best thing that we can do is do the things and understand the things. Some of the things we already do work in our favor, and then just take it a step further and find like-minded people who are willing to think in the same way, and then everything becomes beautiful and blissful. And that's why I'm so grateful for this community and for everyone watching this YouTube video. But that's the third point. So we have those 3 things nailed, and that's the base way to begin engaging things. From there, it is really important that you kind of expand the body. Again, if we're not constantly developing, then we're aging. And equally, if we're not constantly developing, then how can we expand and shape and shift the things stuck within? Proper movement, proper expansion, proper development, that's where the kind of second step lies. And this is the final kind of key point of everything, which I'm going to go in depth through. When we're talking about trauma emotions or patterns or these things stored within, we need to understand that movement is the key to all of this. More important than diet, more important than sunlight, even though these things are factually and inevitably unbelievably important. Movement is the key to everything. It's the key of how we express ourselves. It's the reason why we find dance so enchanting. It's the reason that we find and judge people based off the way they hold themselves, the way they move. Honestly, it's more important than our faces. The way we carry ourselves, the way we move, and the way we release. And so that's why in the modern world, it's so crazy to see people walking with duck feet, people walking with terrible posture, the fact that people view it as normal to have more of a hunchback over time with age, and they view that as a natural process, rather than realizing that rather than just waking up with this one day, it's an accumulation of negative habits. So the key is in proper movement. Now, this is where it varies a tiny bit, I think, if you're a man or a woman, and there are some things there, like, for example, I wouldn't have my 59-year-old mother do, but I would do, and so there is some slight nuance to this, and also that's why in the community we have it sectioned out for women and male modules. Again, not because it's radically different, just because with age, with time, with people's different issues, then I think that nuance is really useful. And that's why we also have my mum and sister as an accountability coach for support for women in the community who make up a lot of it. It's a beautifully evenly split and kind of diverse community, to be honest, which is cool. I think sprinting is a really good practice to kind of build up to, but I also think initially hopping, skipping, jumping. So the base of it all should be elasticity, and therefore the most important movement is hopping and this kind of bobbing up and down motion. So the general movement, and most important, is lymphatic hops. This is super easy. You can use things like a rebounder, but it's better to do it barefoot, grounded on the earth. And this will then allow the lymph to stimulate and flow throughout the body. You can keep your hips back and keep your head directly forward the entire time with your tongue on the roof of the mouth. You'll actually be able to feel the fascial connections, especially if you try and keep your ankles stiff. Try and keep your feet, kind of elastic springs rather than flapping into the ground and just flopping in. You want to be stiff in the feet, elastic throughout the rest of the body, tongue on the roof of the mouth, and be like a pogo stick bouncing up and down. Practicing this throughout the day is very important. There was a recent really interesting scientific study, I'll see if I can find it, on this idea of elasticity and jumping and longevity, which is fascinating, but practicing that is really important. And then building up to using that into key fundamental movements. So working with the body in terms of even practices, building up to practices like sprinting, not forcing them. But eventually, I think that's one of the base human movements and one of the most effective for rebuilding and doing things that we don't naturally do. I think if someone can sprint even once a week up until as long as they can, or for as long as they can, then they will age better, move better, breathe better, function better. Equally, I think an exceptionally important note with movement is this idea of flow, okay? And this is one thing I would like to kind of talk about, which is rather than forcing and pushing initially. And I do think there are places for sprints and things in the future for many people. I do also think there are places for more difficult movement. I think that's some resistance movements. I think all of these things can be useful. But I think really just building flow is the base of the system. So we can do basic lymphatic movements and spiral fascial movements to just swing and twist and move the body, and understand that we're meant to be elastic, we're meant to be able to twist and move and pivot. And so even if we're not playing exceptionally difficult sport, we can build through this with a basic lymphatic and fascial routine. And this applies to people that are older and just want to regain movement, and people that are younger and someone that wants to be a professional footballer. I think the same kind of system applies here, because no matter what point in life we're at, our bodies are meant to develop. So this exercise I call walking arm whips. One leg forward, switch the arms and whip them around. Keep your head facing forward the entire time. Then you're going to step back, keep the bow in your leg, keep the heel flicking away, and rotate back and forth like this. Do this on each side. This will activate the spiral fascia, and the moment you do this, you'll begin to feel your body opening up. Some of these base lymphatic and fascial movements are really powerful, and they really work in this kind of system of opening up the body, allowing movement. And the more kind of enchanted you can get with it, the more you can stop resting in between. Rather than pushing hard and resting in between, the more you can kind of flow and be and shift and move consistently for 10, 20, 30 minutes, and really work with your body rather than pushing it and pausing, pushing and stopping, pushing and pulling, just being. Then as a result, you'll engage your lymphatic system much more effectively. The lymphatic system is interconnected with the fascial system. This will open up movement, you'll improve posture, and you'll target the actual root cause. From there, with regard to emotions and trauma, when you're flowing, when you're more present, when you can get into this point from movement, you'll shift your nervous system, because again, you can't overthink your way out of thinking. However, you can move your way out of thought. Okay, and as a result, if we can get into the flow with our bodies, we become more present within ourselves. This allows new patterns to be formed, and as a result, this allows everything to open up and our minds to eventually shift. So building these principles is the key, focusing on releasing certain points and humming, focusing on functional movements, and actually understanding the pattern behind and the root cause behind everything is key. And then I want to mention one kind of other final thing and point, which is going into this kind of topic and everything. It is important to understand and fully correlate health as looks, just to round all of this out. Again, there are some more transformations on the screen just in case people are losing their attention span, they're getting tired, whatever the situation is, however you're feeling, let's pick up the pace, let's get alert. This kind of correlation, how does this all work together? Usually I make videos about health as looks, obviously this is completely correlated. I think it is one big system, and that's the way that we're going to progress, that's the way that everything's going to open up. We're going to be doing videos now with my mum, sister and I. For those of you that are familiar, if you're not, then get familiar, they're absolute legends. You'll like them way more than you like me, which is so cool to see. We're going to be doing family videos. We're going to really be building this out. The goal is to obviously center this around one key thing, health is looks, but really build out an entire ecosystem. Not only is the way we look and appear and beauty shaped by our health, but also by the way we're experiencing things, the the way that we feel, the way we move throughout life, the people we're surrounded by, and the entire way we operate. And so creating a proper system with this is the key. That's why all of the routines, all of the movements, everything, it's not promising, full world, life-changing, revival, and it's not broadening our horizons too much. It's really focused on this one niche, but this niche slowly expanding into absolutely everything. So if you work with the lymphatic system, if you work with your face, if you work with your breathing, if you can shift your breathing even slightly, you change every aspect of your life. You sleep better, you move better, you live longer, everything becomes easier. Your voice shifts, your presence changes. The way we breathe is everything. So we're not worried about taking our next breath, we're not worried about the amount of oxygen in the room, but we're worried about the amount of money we have, or the amount of people we have here, or the opportunity we have here, or the need to go here. We are so hyper-fixated in this reality of the modern world where we're focusing on kind of scarcity, but we're completely disregarding our bodies, and people believe they can change everything around their lives, but they don't understand that they can change the internal in their bodies from which life comes, and as a result, everything else shifts around it. So that's my perspective, that's my opinion, that's the kind of correlation between science and the body. It's a newly evolving field. We're going to try and run research on it. There are big things to come, but all we need from you guys is more transformations. We need more people to get stuck in. We need more people to understand this and feel it intuitively and really push it, and that's what I really hope to see. So if anyone has any transformations that they've already done, send them to me, get inside the community, engage, build this all out. I'd love to speak with everyone, see everyone, even if I don't have the time to speak with everyone, just seeing everyone in the comments, the community, engaging, doing things, spreading positivity. It's beautiful, it's amazing to see, and I hope this was helpful. It's insane. Emotions are really stored not only in the mind but in the body, and I think this practice is going to change everything. So thank you for watching. Health is looks. Have an amazing day. Peace out.